Here's something the government's own data confirms, but almost nobody is talking about. The American middle class, the thing your entire childhood was built around, the thing politicians campaign on, the thing every financial plan assumes you're part of, is statistically shrinking. Not collapsing dramatically, not crashing like 2008, just quietly, steadily, mathematically disappearing. And the most unsettling part, most of the people leaving it don't even know which direction they went. In 1971, 61% of Americans lived in middle-class households. Today, that number is 51%. That's a decade's worth of people, roughly 20 million households, that quietly slipped out of the category that was supposed to define American life. And the institutions with the biggest financial stake in your optimism would very much prefer you didn't look too closely at where they went. My name is Nick, and today we're going to follow the math, domino by domino, and figure out exactly what's happening to the middle class in 2026. Who's actually falling out of it, who's quietly climbing above it, and what the difference between those two groups actually comes down to. Hit subscribe if you want the real numbers. Let's get into it.
Before we talk about why it's shrinking, we need to agree on what it actually is. Because middle class is one of those phrases everyone uses and almost nobody defines. Pew Research defines it as households earning between 2/3 and double the national median income. In 2026, that's roughly $56,000 to $169,000 for a family of three. That's a wide range. A $57,000 household in rural Mississippi and a $168,000 household in San Jose are technically both middle class, which already tells you the definition has a problem. But here's what the data actually shows inside that range. The middle class isn't just shrinking, it's hollowing out from the center. The upper tier, people near that $169,000 ceiling, has grown. The lower tier, people near that $56,000 floor, has grown. The true middle of the middle, the $80,000 to $110,000 range that used to be the stable core of American economic life, that's the part getting squeezed from both sides simultaneously. Think of it like a tube of toothpaste. The middle class isn't disappearing because the tube is empty. It's disappearing because someone is pressing both ends at the same time, and the middle is getting pushed out.
So what's doing the squeezing? Three forces running simultaneously that don't make headlines individually, but combine into something structurally devastating. Squeeze 1. Inflation hit the middle hardest. Between 2020 and 2026, cumulative inflation ran approximately 23%. Your dollar buys 23% less than it did 6 years ago. But that number isn't evenly distributed. The things wealthy households spend proportionally more on, investments, equities, financial assets, went up in value. The things middle-class households spend proportionally more on, housing, groceries, insurance, childcare, healthcare, went up in cost. The bottom 20% of earners spend roughly 8.9% of their income on food at home. The top 20% spend 3.6%. Same grocery store, completely different financial experience of the same price increase. Middle-class families, spending 40 to 50% of their income on housing and food combined, absorbed the inflation wave at full force. Upper-income households absorbed it at a discount. Squeeze 2. Asset ownership became the great dividing line. If you owned a home in 2020, your net worth went up roughly $150,000 in 2 years purely from appreciation. If you owned an S&P 500 index fund in 2020, it's up approximately 80% by 2026. If you owned neither, which describes roughly 45% of Americans, you watched inflation eat your savings while other people's balance sheets expanded without them doing anything. This is the part that breaks the traditional middle-class story. The old formula was work hard, save money, buy a house, retire comfortably. That formula assumed asset prices were accessible. It assumed a $272,000 median home was reachable on a median income. It assumed the stock market was something you could enter gradually. In 2026, the median home is $418,000, and the wealth gap between asset owners and non-asset owners has never been wider in the post-war era. Squeeze 3. The cost of being middle class went up faster than middle class incomes. This is the one nobody puts on a graph, but everyone feels. The lifestyle that defined middle class in 1995, one house, two cars, kids and activities, occasional vacation, retirement savings, now costs roughly $300,000 a year in a major metro area to replicate with equivalent quality. The median household income is $83,700. The middle-class lifestyle now costs nearly 4 times what the middle class earns. Something had to give, and what gave was the definition itself.
Let's make this real. Let's call him Derek. Derek is 38. He works in IT support for a regional hospital system in a mid-sized Midwestern city. He makes $72,000 a year. His wife, Sarah, works part-time in school administration, bringing in $28,000. Combined household income, $100,000 a year. By every traditional measure, Derek and Sarah are solidly middle class. Here's their monthly reality. Their mortgage on a $310,000 home they bought in 2019 at 3.8% is $1,450 a month. Property taxes and insurance add $620. 2 car payments. They needed 2 cars because their suburb has no transit, total $1,140. Childcare for 2 kids, $2,200 a month, more than their mortgage. Groceries, $1,100. Health insurance premiums after employer contribution, $680. Utilities, phone, internet, $420. Student loan payments, $380. That's $7,990 a month in fixed and near-fixed costs. Their combined take-home after taxes is approximately $6,850 a month. They are spending $1,140 more per month than they bring home every single month. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they're buying luxury goods, because the fixed cost floor of middle-class life in 2026 exceeds the income middle-class jobs actually pay. They're not saving for retirement. They haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years. They have $4,200 in an emergency fund, which is roughly 2 weeks of their actual expenses. By every statistical measure, Derek and Sarah are middle class. By every lived experience measure, they are 1 car repair away from a genuine financial crisis. And they are not unusual. They are statistically representative.
So we establish the middle class is shrinking. The real question is, where are people going when they leave it? The answer is both directions, and the split is more predictable than most people want to admit. The people moving up share a remarkably consistent profile. They entered the asset-owning class before 2020. They own a home, an investment account, or both. They work in fields where remote work is possible: tech, finance, consulting, medicine. Their income isn't just a salary, it has a component that compounds: a 401k match, stock options, home equity growing quietly in the background. Their wealth generates additional wealth without requiring additional hours.
The people moving down share an equally consistent profile. They rent, they work in fields where physical presence is required: retail, food service, healthcare support, transportation, construction. Their income is purely linear: hours times wage, nothing more. When inflation hits, they absorb it entirely in cash. When asset prices rise, they watch from the outside. When a financial shock arrives, a job loss, a medical bill, a car breakdown, there is no buffer. There is only debt. The dividing line in 2026 is not education level. It is not work ethic. It is not even income entirely. It is whether you own assets that appreciate or whether you trade only your time for money, in a world where time is worth less every year and assets are worth more.
This didn't happen by accident. It happened by a specific sequence of policy decisions that consistently favored asset prices over wage growth. From 2009 to 2022, the Federal Reserve held interest rates near zero for over a decade. Zero interest rates are effectively a subsidy for asset owners. They make stocks worth more. They make real estate worth more. They make borrowing cheap for people who already have collateral. For people without assets, zero interest rates meant nothing except that their savings account paid 0.01%. Meanwhile, the federal minimum wage hasn't increased since 2009, the longest stretch without an increase since it was created in 1938. Adjusted for inflation, the minimum wage in 2026 has less purchasing power than it did in 1968, the same era when a single factory worker could own a home, support a family, and retire with a pension. The tax code consistently taxes capital gains, profits from asset appreciation, at lower rates than wages. A hedge fund manager paying 20% on investment returns, a nurse paying 32% on her salary. Same country, completely different relationship with the tax system. None of this is a conspiracy. It's a series of individually defensible decisions that compound over decades into a structural tilt. The system wasn't designed to eliminate the middle class. It just consistently, quietly rewarded owning things over doing things. And after 40 years of that tilt, the math finally started showing up in the Pew Research data.
What comes next? Here's the honest forecast, and I'll warn you in advance, it's not dramatic, which somehow makes it worse. The middle class does not collapse. It does not disappear overnight. It continues to hollow out slowly, quietly, in ways that don't make the news cycle but absolutely show up in the data every 4 years when Pew runs the numbers again. The people who navigate it successfully will be the ones who understand that the old formula, work hard, spend carefully, save in a bank account, was built for an economy that no longer exists. The new formula, whether you like it or not, is earn income and own assets that appreciate. Both, not one or the other. That doesn't mean you need to be wealthy to start. An S&P 500 index fund with $100 a month is asset ownership. A starter home, even an imperfect one in an imperfect location, is asset ownership. A 401k with an employer match is asset ownership. The entry point is lower than the anxiety around it suggests. What it does mean is that the people waiting until the conditions are perfect, until rates drop, until prices fall, until everything feels safe, are effectively choosing to remain purely on the time for money side of the equation, while inflation quietly erodes the value of that time. The middle class isn't disappearing because people aren't working hard enough. It's disappearing because working hard stopped being sufficient. And recognizing that distinction is the first step toward actually doing something about it on an individual level, even if the structural problems take decades to fix.
If you are in your 30s or 40s right now, you are not imagining the pressure. The math confirms it. The median household income is $83,700. The cost of a genuinely stable middle-class life in 2026, with housing, 2 cars, childcare, healthcare, and retirement savings, is somewhere north of $150,000 in most metro areas. The gap between what middle-class jobs pay and what middle-class life costs has never been wider in the post-war era. You are not failing at the system. The system was recalibrated, slowly, quietly, over decades, in ways that made it significantly harder to succeed in using only the tools the previous generation told you to use. The path forward is not optimism, and it's not despair. It's just math. Run your actual numbers. Build the asset side of your life with whatever you have available right now, not when the conditions improve. Understand the difference between income that compounds and income that just shows up and leaves. And stop measuring your financial health against a middle-class standard that was designed for an economy that existed 30 years ago. The middle class isn't gone, but the version of it that required only hard work and patience to reach, that version is what's quietly disappearing, and now you know exactly why. Drop a like if this hit different. It genuinely helps more than you know.